We'll call this meeting to order. Nacogdoches CVB. First order of business, approve the minutes from the November 28th meeting. Have a motion?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Yes. And go into the financial update. Ms. Bartlett.
Y'all should have a copy of the November statement. Full disclosure, we did have to borrow from reserves for about 2 weeks. I moved over $50,000 on the 12th and moved it all back on the 30th because we got our hot tax check for the third quarter. So it didn't show up on here because the magic went away all during the same month. The only other thing that looks a little odd, maybe, possibly, is the restroom trailer. We had discussed in our budget that we were moving that to the balance sheet, and that is proving to be a little more challenging accounting-wise than I thought it would be, only because a true sinking fund or depreciation fund for an asset would be physically moving money every month over into a special account to save, to pay off a bond, for example, like the city does, or replace a very large asset. You build up a depreciation fund to do that. I'm not sure that this board would vote to replace that restroom trailer if it crashed and burned. So I'm not sure that that's really what we're out for here. But we do want to use the rental fees to pay the expenses. And so what I've done is created a subset in the bank account just to track that so that it will carry over year to year. But because we actually invoice for this, I have to show income coming in. It's got to go in the bank. So this becomes a little bit more difficult logistically. But what I did was put it on here, and you can see what those are and how they're accumulating, but I'm not putting a budget number on them because we don't really know how many times we'll rent it and what the expenses will be. We just hope that they'll wash at the end of the year, or will accumulate enough if we have a major expense. I don't. Do you have any questions about anything else? I'll be glad to answer them. Our income for brick sales and merchandise sales are ahead, but so are the expenses that go along with them. So those are good things because that makes us money.
Were we pretty close to where we were last year?
I'm not sure. I was just comparing it to the budget. We should be at 17%, and we're at 22 on income and 13 on expenses. So, if they're going to be unbalanced, that's the best way to be unbalanced, is have more coming in than going out. So
that's true.
I'm not sure because so many of our things time really weird. We get the money in one big chunk in 1 quarter, so it kind of depends. I mean, literally, I got the check on the 30th. So if last year it came in on December the 5th, it would be not comparable at all.
Right, it would totally skew it.
It would totally skew it to not be correct. And we also are changing our sales, marketing, and the sales, marketing, visitor services categories around a little bit, so it's kind of hard to compare to last year because we're apportioning things a little differently. But overall, I think we're talking so.
Yeah, overall, big picture to it, we finished, that's later presentation, but we finished ahead of last year as far as revenues. Any other questions for Ms. Bartlett? Thank you very much. Items for discussion. Visitor center plan.
Put this on the agenda for discussion, and then under advisement of Mr. Jeffers, realize that there's more information to be gathered. But we can, basically what happened was it was born out of a public complaint about the azaleas around the Ibarbo statue, that the azaleas were too high and you couldn't see Mr. Ibarbo. So we kind of rectified that situation by agreeing to cutting away more azaleas from around, but not altering the height, because we agreed that we like that barrier. The we being Brian Bray and myself. And then that led to the discussion of the landscaping on our west side of the building. There were roses planted there, and just because of the conditions in the shade, they have never done well. They will never do well. So Brian was gracious enough to price out the cost of doing camellias that would mirror what we're already doing on the east side, and they would do well under those conditions. And so he did give me some pricing about that. I believe what we're wanting to do, possibly instead of just piecemealing, is look at maybe some other financing alternatives and anything else that might be more cost effective to do all in one fell swoop instead of just doing the roses and camellias. So if there's any discussion, we can have discussion about that now. Otherwise, this would be an item to be tabled probably until our January meeting.
You say you have a landscape person?
Well, the Parks and Rec department
Oh,
does
okay,
it.
they take care of it.
They handle the maintenance for us, and
So it's about removing the roses and putting camellias.
they would remove the roses from the west side of the building along Pecan Street, close to our building.
Right.
They've just never thrived. Mike can tell you why. But camellias would do really, really well, and then also just sort of balance out the landscaping since we do have that beautiful camellia bush
That makes sense.
on the east side as
What
well.
y'all talk about on the south side in front of the stage?
We did have a conversation about that. I think, where did we land on that, Mike? Was it some decorative heather? I know we talked
Some
about
kind of a hedge, some kind of a boxwood hedge or something that could be maintained, because those roses don't do well either back there.
I was told Jeff had to that on purpose to keep kids from crawling onto the stage.
Well,
I remember that back in the day.
but that was discussed, replacing that little narrow bed strip that's there with something else.
So when we have all the complete picture, we'll bring it back, but it was already on the agenda since I have to do them in advance. That's just what that was.
More to come. Awesome. All right, Bluegrass concert proposal.
What did we determine about whether we had the money on that or not? Whether we felt comfortable with spending that money on a discretionary expense above and beyond whether or not we wanted to do this particular thing. They're asking for $2,500,
Yes.
and maybe we could start with, do we have the money to make that kind of decision about?
The issue that I had with last month is that are we going to set a precedent for?
Well, and I want to get into that, but I just want to see if we don't feel like we have $2,500 to give to an event, then there's no point in us moving forward. If we do, then I think we can get into the merits, and I agree with you and have some thoughts on that as well. Cheryl, do you have an opinion?
Well, the visitor, we've changed it to servicing and events, has a $15,000 budget. It's a matter of, do you want to spend $2,500 of your $15,000?
Okay, so we have that, and we're gonna spend $15,000 on events, potentially like this. It's not already earmarked for, Blueberry.
Well, that would be a question for the events people.
Well, it's part of our servicing, so one of the things we are doing this year is much heavier on our servicing, which is to allow groups to get something from the CVB, like a goodie bag or
Name tag.
collateral name
lanyards.
tags. I mean, that's something we can do now, so that $15,000 isn't a ton of money.
So you think that $2,500 is a pretty good chunk of it?
It's junk, yeah. I think if that's the one area we've spent the most in, it's that area.
It's a chair. I think for other groups in the past, what we've been able to do is maybe leverage some of our other like media buys to give them in kind contributions that would equal $2,500. Just the fact, I mean, the way things are going to work out, we do in fact have the $2,500 to go towards it. We absolutely could do that. Are we going to see a return on that investment is a good question to ask, because this isn't a group typically that puts a lot of heads in beds. The community will see a tremendous economic impact because these people will eat in our restaurants, gas up, spend money in the shops and they'll spend time here. So there's that aspect, but in so much as the CVB seeing occupancy tax from it, I don't know that we would. And, to reach that 25, even to a break-even point when you're talking about the collection of tax, I mean.
How many heads do we have to put in the beds to do that? And, well, and I'll say this on the issue. I viewed it slightly differently in that I think that potentially, now I don't know, I don't have any sort of data to back this up, but potentially having an event on Friday night that dovetails into an event on Saturday theoretically could put heads in beds. I also know from somebody who's been to a lot of concerts and music festivals, and I think some other people have mentioned this too, if you don't have a good sound system this year, you're not going to go back next year. I mean, we had talked about how, I had talked about at the last meeting how niche music festivals, even though bluegrass isn't necessarily my thing, I'll listen to it, but I'm not going to travel to see it.
Right.
Or plan to necessarily. But niche music festivals and events are kind of where it is because every town is having these very generalist type of events in every city. And the city with the biggest money gets all the attention. And everybody else kind of just gets regional attention. Now, when you get into genres on a small budget, but with good mind and good planners behind it, you can do a bluegrass festival that could compete with, Def Leppard playing at a music festival in Houston, because Def Leppard is a broad crowd, and you can see them do a reunion tour at any county fair across America. But to get this certain group of bluegrass bands together, that might only happen. You might have two brothers that are two guys that used to be in a band, and you get both those bands, and it's going to be a heck of an event for all the bluegrass people there. If you get a small event like that, it may not cost that much money, but you can start competing, just like our film festival has done. There are film festivals around the world that have more money than we have. For a regional film festival, we probably draw as much attention as anybody, bang for buck concerned. Ron, thank you. And I could see, I'm not saying this is going to turn into something that successful, but we've seen, our Day of the Dead down at the Cole Arts Center ended up becoming an event that was much larger than we imagined. And I think that's because we have good people and good minds in Nacogdoches on these committees planning these events. That being said, the $2,500 to the Bluegrass Festival for me is not necessarily an investment guaranteeing heads and beds. It's more like a gamble. It's more like a sort of venture capitalist investment. We're going to go throw a little money at it and see if it blossoms into something. The potential, I think, is as good as anything else we have going right now. To put heads in beds and to become a thing, because it hits all of the cultural zeitgeisty things, being that niche festival, being bluegrass, which is really hot in Texas, and being the early summer festival sort of situation. Also being that there is that draw, stay on Saturday and enjoy the Blueberry Festival. Now, I don't know the people who like bluegrass like Blueberry Festivals.
I'm sure it brings people into.
Because there's two
I think they plan on always having it on that weekend. We know that weekend's the launch of summer, our longest weekend. There's a lot of marketing potential there for that weekend. The blue, just works.
Yeah, it is.
You guys have marketed the weekend, in the past, so it all fits.
And listen, Damon, last year, Friday night does do better for the hotels. We're still working to keep them for Saturday night. So in the last 2 years, 2 years ago it was almost, but last year, Friday night was sold out.
Well, I have to believe that's good for the hotels, because if I go see music, I don't want to drive back to Tyler after their concert, or from Tyler to Nacogdoches after the concert ends. I'm even likely to stay in Tyler. And in Shreveport, I'm definitely staying. And so that could be, I see that as definitely some potential for us here.
And I know from the chamber side, we encourage our businesses, especially those in the venue and entertainment business, to keep it going. We love that Millard's Crossing is doing the Blueberry Jam, and we really would love to see a blue gospel, some type of
Brunch on
gospel
Sunday.
brunch on Sunday.
Sunday.
And
That would be
everyone is
so
doing brunches.
cool.
So we would like to encourage more people to use that weekend.
Yeah.
I was going to say John Gospel Brunch at the hotel and convention center. I mean, it's, we'll bring up that
Sunday brunch.
Yeah.
Does well. We've looked at things like this in the past. We've done things like this in the past, and I think there was a change in the mindset of the board and the CVB a couple of years ago to really be cautious when entering anything, the word music in it, certainly, and to really analyze what our specific role is in this community, which is heads and beds. And so, that's what I would look at. What is the initial investment? Is this something that's going to be expected year over year? What is the return on this as far as heads and beds? I think on that particular weekend, there is compression in the market already with Blueberry. So where would that put us, and would that compress out beyond Nacogdoches with the bluegrass? Does it put some heads and beds? Certainly. There are.
Do you have any equal, but
Yeah.
you have data on how many heads and beds it's put in the past years? What are we looking at?
Well, I mean, I can pull it, but I mean, we have roughly around 1,000 rooms, and we were full on 900, maybe something on Friday. Now, it may not all be. We had a convention that weekend went huge, but they're going to repeat it because they're ag and, everything about the blueberry, so they wanted to do that. Their backing's out of Washington, D.C. It's a minority group. They had a really wonderful turnout over there, and they're going to do it again on that weekend because they're having people come Thursday. The event's on Friday. The concert's on Friday night, but it's all about the festival for them.
Do we know if Heritage Festival is the same weekend this year?
I don't know. I think that helps not being on the same, personally.
I think it's good not being on the same, because I think that,
There's a lot of things on that weekend that already occur
That helps.
that cause compression, that cause hotels to be full. So what would this add to that? I guess is what we have to look at and decide.
But also, I think, what David brought up is the quality of the music. And
Yes.
the quality of the music means people come back.
without sound, it has no chance.
Right. It doesn't work.
Right.
So, my whole thing about it, I think it's a wise thing to do. To improve their quality. The question is, like Sherry brought up, one-time deal, what do, so that A, it's not expected every year, and B, it's not expected for every event.
Oh, no.
I got to figure out a way to work for that.
And to go ahead and lay my cards on the table, I'm already there as far as a one-time investment to see what it'll do. To vote to invest in it, and should we do it, I might go either way. But to go and hear and look around and see the effect that it has on people, I feel like I'm there. Joanna helped me get there. Y'all helped me get there knowing that we have money for this and that we do have the money if that's really what we want to do and we see it as a benefit. Don't see, I know we have a lot going on that weekend. I just don't see how it could not have the potential to put heads in beds, because it's still going to draw in different. The only reason it wouldn't is if people were coming here for blueberry anyway. But the agricultural people aren't already coming here for bluegrass, and a lot of these bluegrass people might not already be coming here for blueberry. I think we're attracting a third or fourth or fifth demographic that weekend if we have room for them. Because, again, would it be more attractive to us if it was on a different weekend? I mean, if we're saying that the weekend's too crowded, would it be more attractive on a different weekend? Because part of the reason I like it is explicitly that it's on this.
Yeah, no, I think that's contingent upon that, and coming from a destination that did allot grant money to groups, there is, and we've already raised that issue of seed money versus feed money, and looking at the business plan of the event to see, do they have built-in factors to make their event sustainable so that they don't become reliant upon getting that ask every year? And then also, how can we leverage that investment into that event? So, they gave a really great presentation, and I trust their metrics that they presented to us. But are those the metrics that mean something to us that we can use in different ways? Because then it's not just we're investing in the sound so that people will enjoy it, but we're also acquiring some data that we can use to make other decisions and look at different directions. And then we can also, put our sort of contract writers in there, that our logo gets this placement on your collateral, and we get a say in how they're marketing and where they're marketing, so that we just can further ensure that they're setting themselves up for success, so that our investment does have a chance to really make a difference.
Well, and that's all on us. But yes, I agree. I think we have skin in the game. We put $2,500 in, we have skin in the game. So, we need to be telling people here, we need to make it a part of our promotion.
Is there a way we could, if we're going to approve this investment, that we can make it dependent upon seeing their business plan and having, that in writing from them?
I would say if they want our $2,500, it would be up to them to say, yeah. It's a yes with condition, and if you agree to these conditions, then sure. But if not, then good luck, and we'll promote you, and we'll still do everything else.
What are we looking for in that?
Well, I just,
We don't know.
especially as far as setting a precedent, I want to see their numbers. They need $2,500. Are they, to me, the event should eventually be self-sustaining.
That's the goal.
And I want to see their business plan on how they're going to get there.
Well, they don't
And
charge
we're-
anything. So there is no business.
Yeah, it's all what they get.
But there are ways,
We don't charge for the festival either.
Right.
And we are paying the same people to set up the same awesome equipment on 3 stages. So
You just have sponsors.
we have to find sponsors. You have to find income.
And they have
the
one
vendors.
sponsor, but we can't be their sponsor every year.
Well-
So they need to,
Yeah, that.
And I-
Well, but maybe they need the year to show off
right.
And
and
that's
invite those businesses in to see what's happening, so they'll know what they're going to get.
The difference is their goal is to just get a lot of people there. They don't care if they come from in town or out of town. Our goal is a little different.
There's a lot of out-of-towners, so it's.
Yeah,
That's right.
I think they
Right.
want.
I'm not saying you're not trying to get
And
that.
they do a good job promoting it at other events that they go to. And if that is, it's like Damon said, that bluegrass, because I'm a concert girl too, and that's probably not my favorite, unfortunately, but they come in droves. The other cool thing is, it's not to segue, but they're good too. But that's still good, for our, economy, right?
It absolutely
And,
is.
but we're getting in more contact with our vendors, so we need to promote, we need to make sure that we're covering all bases and all overnights and all the areas to promote it. But I think they're at a crossroads. They need to promote bigger if they're getting new sound to me. It was a bust this last year for me. It
And-
sounds terrible.
I think, and they'll never have a chance under those circumstances. I had heard similarly, and it's a non-event at that point. I know that every organization tells people that ask for money, we're only giving this to you this year. And so, we're not doing it. We're doing it 1 year only to invest, to give you the opportunity to raise your profile so you can get that money someplace else next year.
That's a great way to put it. I think you said it.
Then there we go.
Make your motion.
I would like to make a motion.
Wait.
Wait, yeah, okay, I'll
Still discussing.
I go back to, I really like and would like to support this. Now then tell me, if the Girl Scouts come in tomorrow and says, we're bringing the jamboree here, we want $2,500. Are we going to give it to them? JC's come in the next day and say, we need $2,500. My only issue is, let's define what type of programs that we're going to support, so at least we have some leg to stand on when somebody says, well, you gave it to the chamber, but you didn't give it to the JC.
It's not the chamber. That's incorrect. I mean,
It's
not the chamber.
I'm sorry, I thought it was.
Yeah. And I know that's a misconception. That's true.
Okay. The chamber person, the former president, did he make a presentation?
Scott Waller, but he's just the co-chair.
He's
of the
a chairman, past chairman of the chamber board of directors.
I was thinking, but I have no problem. I have no problem.
He's one of the co-creators of the Blueberry concert. And whenever you use the word Blueberry, people associate it with the chamber. But it is not a chamber program.
Well, back up then. Whatever group that is, if the Boy Scouts come tomorrow and says, we want $2,500 also, he gave it to them, give it to us.
Well, what do they want it for? Because
That's what I'm saying. So we need to have some kind of parameters to say, these are the type of things that we're going to support. Because if not, we're going to be here every one of them that comes in, we're going to be debating about the relatively supported.
You just need to.
Well, I do not feel obligated to support any other organization's sound system because we support this sound system. This was something, if we decided to do this, we would decide to do this on a case-by-case basis after 2 meetings of debate. And it was not simply because they were asking for money. It was because we weighed the merits, we talked to our experts, we got opinions, we evaluated those, and then we voted as a board. And that's the way it would be with we're not saying yes to this because we have to, because it meets some criteria. And we're not saying no to it because we have to, because it doesn't meet criteria. We are making a decision based on information and our opinions. There is no criteria.
Well, to Dr. Jack's point, though,
But that's the whole thing, you have no criteria.
Well, so the part of it,
it does have to.
The whims of this board right now says, well, let's do it. A few people change the whims of the next board, says, we ain't going to do it.
This happens
And
to
that's
be an
true.
ask that is in compliance with,
mission statement is what you got to go back to.
Right. It doesn't promote tourism.
well, it's a legal use of hotel occupancy tax, so that's the first thing. So if a group were to come in, we could say, these are restricted funds, this is the test of what it is. So like a Girl Scout Jamboree probably wouldn't, right off the bat, we would love to support you, but that is not a legal expenditure that we're allowed to make.
And then,
But we don't have to, just like we don't have to we've done a music festival before, but the next time somebody comes and wants to do a music festival, we don't have to just because once upon a time we did one. We don't have to give the Girl Scouts money because they can put heads on beds just because once upon a time we gave the bluegrass.
But it's a two-part test, so it has to put heads in beds and promote tourism. So the argument could be made that while it does one, and it's not an and or, it is an and then there are 9 different categories that it has to fill in, and that comes from the Attorney General's office for the legal expenditures of those funds. And then it's based on availability. We can't give away something we don't have, so if we don't have the money to give, then that's the other thing. And then, is it in compliance with our predetermined mission statement? So, I think before it gets to being presented to the board and making it on the agenda, it would have to pass. But you raise a really good point. Yeah, it would have to, to reach a certain point. And we certainly, we've run into it in the past with Vintage Market Days, which does bring in, they put a tremendous amount of heads in beds. And they are used to being in communities that have $10,000 to give them to incentivize them to continue to bring their group back. That's not us. We're not in that position. And I wasn't here when that determination was made in previous years to sort of separate ourselves from the event planning to the event promotion. This just happens to be an area where it is a small enough ask that it is realistic for us to satisfy. We staff would need to be diligent in making sure that we bring every bit of value that we can out of that, knowing in advance that we're not going to see a lot of heads and beds. We're not going to see that direct ROI, but that it will benefit the community. It will help grow the event. It'll give us the opportunity to capture video of some of the attendees, to advance our brand of we have a knack for something of our arts and culture, so it helps us advance. So I think we do need to have something in writing so that we can have our leg to stand on and give people out.
And that just allows them to ask, because every ask for money ultimately comes down to, I mean, it can pass all 7 or 8 of the other criteria, and it comes down to one final one, and it's the vote of this board. And we can say that they're whims, but, I think that we try, and they are in a way, but I think that we try and educate our whims with as much data as possible, and we talk as a group and flesh these things out. But ultimately, I don't think that we can come up with a criteria that's going to say everybody who fits into this box gets a check, and everybody who doesn't fit into that box does not get a check.
No, that's wrong. Everybody who fits in this box will be considered.
Exactly.
But you have a budget.
The bottom line is going to be if funds are available. But if they don't fit in that box, then why bring it to the board?
Right, and there's an application process that there are things that the board would never see because they don't meet the criteria, and that is filtered through the staff. And so there is that in place. It don't sound like there's absolutely nothing in place. We have an application process. They go through it. If they don't meet the criteria, it never sees this board. But if it's something that we feel would enhance or potentially we get a return on through heads and beds, then that does make it to the board. Would that be correct?
I agree.
I'd like to make a motion that we give them the $2,500 contingent upon some reassurances about their marketing outside of the area, and with full knowledge that this is a one-time gift, so we can give them the opportunity to grow the festival.
I'll second that. Have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Now, could we also consider getting the criteria together in the application process that we can at least kind of review?
I could have that for you for January and put it on the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Good. Staff reporting. Spot now.
Yes. I had to pull my notes. Get all that down. That's great.
That was riveting.
That was riveting. Okay. I would just like to remind you all of our upcoming Destination Marketing Principles Seminar. I told you about that at our last meeting. It will occur January 30th and 31st. And that's the seminar we've been selected to host by the Texas Association of CVBs. I believe our latest update was that 18 have registered. I believe that's accurate. So we have some, but we hope for a lot more. So we hope that y'all will attend and also help us spread the word. That'll be hosted at the Fredonia Hotel. It's going to be a really good event. And Kelly has sent out an email for us through the chamber, so that's very helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll do it again. What is the cutoff for that?
There is a cutoff. I haven't seen one.
Friday before.
We'll send
Yeah.
one out the week before
Okay.
also,
Mhm.
because a lot of people do that.
Thank you.
Or at least after Christmas. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Within our advertising right now, I'm working with Chris to finalize ads highlighting azalea season and spring. We're already at the time where those need to be approved, which is moving quick here. So we're working on that. Additionally, something exciting we were speaking of recently,
I attend meetings for the Northeast Texas Tourism Council. It's basically all of the tourism professionals in Northeast Texas. They go, and one of the opportunities they informed us of at the last meeting were some home and garden shows held in Houston and Dallas that we have the opportunity to work. And we are looking at working one of those possibly in March because we're the garden capital of Texas. So that's a new angle of a show that we can go to and reach that market to hopefully attract them, because azalea season will be in peak just right after that. So we're hoping that we can go and have a presence. That particular show that we're looking at is March 1 through 3rd, and it's in Dallas. So we're hoping to go there and just tell everybody that we're the garden capital because they're already interested. And hopefully that's something that we can try and see a good return in, something exciting we're looking at. Do you have any questions for me about anything? Other than
That's a good place to be.
I'm excited about it.
7,000 azaleas.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, that's the focus of a lot of the ads that we're coming up on is 7,000 azaleas in one garden. We have an ad for that. And then it talks about how the Ruby and Rice garden is the largest in Texas, and so we have some really pretty ads coming up.
Cool. Awesome.
Excited.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Joanna.
Okay, on my lead summary page, that again is out of our system, our CRM. Simple view, just kind of gives you an overview of that we're working with in some of the servicing, and then also direct calls to us to help them put together these events coming up or these conferences. The second page, though, I did want to share with y'all, which is really just it's the same thing, it's just broken down a little bit better. We got a call from Larissa, and so this is from the big dip that occurred on Saturday, December, was that maybe December the 7th, I believe, 1st? Who knows? Anyway, they were asked, or they were challenged by the alumni, or the alumni was challenged to find out how that affected the economic impact. So with some information that they gave us, we were able to plug this into our system, and you can show from that one day direct sales were at almost 200,000. So influx into the community, which is really great. So what this allowed us to think about and to do is that we are going to do this for everything that's out there at the expo. So for us to get a better feel for everything that's happening out there, we will have an economic impact calculator that Anita and her staff can use, and that will keep us in contact with everything that's happening. It has been 3 years in training to get them to call me and have me part of the conversation, or get with the promoter to say, hey, who's coming? Who are you spending the night? Do we have hotel partners? And this is where we step in. And Shirley came in last week and did that using the upcoming ball game with Alabama and the guys at SFA. The coaches are good friends. So one of the ways we thought we could entice them was, hey, come, spend the night. In that email that Shirley distributed, it's got 3 links to 3 of our hotels that are offering special rates, and it's just a CVB special rate. Fredonia is a little different, but the hotels are willing, and we had our first hotel meeting with Cherry and I. The girls from Hampton and Holiday represent a couple of the hotels, but they're all in, and they're also involved with the expo. So we have codes that are already set that are available for anybody and everyone, that even if it's leisure business, we'll be able to get a count from those folks coming in, and they came through our system and also through our website. So we're trying. Scott Shattuck sent us a nice little update. You know, he visited with us last year about, I think we talked about this the last meeting, about some of the impact of the SFA. Sorry, I forgot to put it in your deal because I thought of it this morning because it went with the conversation about music and then also what's happening over at SFA. And with the last show, the Daly and Vincent show, he sent over some information that was really good about out-of-town audiences. They did a survey while they were there. They had 880 people in attendance. Of those, 204 people, 23%, came from 30 miles away. Of that subset, 71 or 35% were spending the night in Nacogdoches. And 182 or 89% of those ate and drank in Nacogdoches, and that was from the 30% that were out. So in that vein, along with the alumni and all of their upcoming events, everything that's going to be happening with Scott is that we're going to make an effort to let them know that we have this EIC, this calculator, and we want to try to utilize it so we can get better data for the things that are already happening here in town.
And to that point, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago, I shared with y'all sentiment graph, and it shows, it's one of the assets that we get through our subscription to Meltwater. It goes through all online articles about us, blogs, social media posts, and it tracks certain keywords and phrases and assigns a numeric value to them. And so you get this graph of positive, neutral, and negative, but it gives you the overall sentiment of whatever you plug in. And so if you plug in Nacogdoches, the example of that one meeting, there was, I think Nacogdoches won the football game, the SFA won the football game, and so that was a high. That was also around the time that we lost the deputy on 259, so that was obviously a low. Then lots of neutrals, but then we can go through on that graph and we can click on it and it shows us the articles that contributed to that rating, sort of thing. But and on that same one, I think it was the signing of the contracts for Stoner's Pizza Parlor, so a new business coming in, and then there was an arts and cultural event at Stephen F. Austin. But you know, it's interesting just if you like graphs and data, but if you really look at it, it reinforces the investment that we make in community partnerships, because it is what NEDCO is doing, it's what the Chamber is doing, it's what Stephen F. Austin is doing. It all, and what we're doing here at the CVB, what the city is doing, it all of that adds, and it's a cumulative effect of how people walk away from us, and how they walk away from us determines, are they going to come back to us for more of it. So, you know, for Scott Shattuck, what I'd like to see us be able to do, even though that might be more of a drive market, people driving in for those events, or even local, it's still interesting to our visitors. That might be something that they would return for if we were able to have more collateral in our lobby to say upcoming Daly and Vincent, you know, these bigger names that they're able to draw, but also get a CD of Daly and Vincent and play that over our sound system, so that when visitors walk in, they can
See and hear.
They can see it. We're getting all of their senses and really educating them, because until I went to a Rotary Club meeting, heard the presentation from Scott about the upcoming events, and went home and did research about Daly and Vincent, fell in love with some of their stuff, knew that was going to be something that my parents would love, but not everybody is going to do that. So it's one of those things that even if it's, oh, I like this, who is this? It's those small touches. We don't have the budget, we don't have the staff numbers to do big, grandiose things, but what we do really, really well are these tiny touches, and those tiny touches are not insignificant. They all add up to make a bigger difference. So I think this is going to be one of those things that really allows us to connect the dots of what we've been doing all along, but to really advance our servicing.
Well, you can reach 1,562 people.
And I
Pretty
see,
good reach for a $15 CD.
Oh, yeah.
I see that's been happening over the years in that.
Yeah.
And I think it's an effort on y'all's part here. But I mean, I've noticed more and more. I mean, it was a couple years ago when, and now these are both loosely connected through SFA, but I think that we gave some seed money at the Cole Arts Center when I was more involved on the board there. We gave some seed money to the film festival, and then a couple years later, when the film festival was just killing it, they gave some seed money back to us. And in that moment, for me, I mean, that was something that was probably very natural, happens all the time in activities. But for me, what I saw was it was all of a sudden this moment where I was like, oh yeah, we're not alone. At the Cole Arts Center trying to present culture, that there's a team of people doing it. And then when you talk about Scott reaching out to you, I start to see that, if the people that come to the university or the people that come to see the azaleas or the people that come to the Blueberry Festival or the Bluegrass Jam just all see it as one thing, that whether it's going on at SFA or in the Azalea Garden or down at Festival Plaza, that we are all one thing and we are presenting the culture of Nacogdoches and Stephen F. Austin University to the world. And y'all are the ones who bring all that together.
No, I mean, when I lived in
Nashville, I saw like every single thing. When you got off the airplane, you were in Music City. I went to a Christian retreat, Trace Diaz there. It was Music City, Trace Diaz. It was like organized through churches. Had nothing to do with music. I think we sang. But it had nothing to do with Music City. I mean, but everything there was Music City. And same when you walk into any business in Bryan College Station, every insurance agency, car wash, has Aggie stuff everywhere. And the chamber went through a push in Nacogdoches a couple years ago to get all of us small business owners to put SFA flair in our businesses. But it's those kinds of unified fronts, the things that you're talking about, these little tenuous things that bind us all together, that for the people who come here, it becomes a whole. And I think that those are things that, we should make our mission, because we're the people, y'all are the people who tell us, but we, once you tell us, we're the people who see the potential for that and seek it from the overhead view, and also have we have the charge to make that happen and put heads in beds.
No, I agree 100% with everything you said. I think you put it very, very well. I think the onus is now on the staff to really come up with a standing operating procedure of what exactly we can extend to different entities, whether it's the Cole Art Center, the Film Festival, Stephen F. Austin, so that they know, educating them as to what we can do and, how we can help further their cause. And then knowing ourselves, looking at what we can ask for in return, because that's a whole partnership. It's a relationship and a dance, and in a community as small as ours, where we're dependent upon those partnerships, there is that give and that take. And so,
First thing, everybody's got to be on the same page.
yeah, and I think we are. Yeah,
We are. Yeah.
But I think, for Joanna and Stephanie and Mike and I sit down and say, okay, what's realistic? What can we realistically do consistently and fairly to all the players, so that we can become that unified front? Because that really is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to represent Nacogdoches, and Nacogdoches is comprised of Stephen F. Austin and the Nacogdoches County, and all these different little subcategories too.
And Scott may not realize that, if you're interested in seeing somebody cover Prince like Pretty Faithfully, or if you're interested in seeing a Russian ballet do the Nutcracker, we have a knack for that. It's their thing, but it's still all of our things.
I think we also need to correct negativism when you see it. A lot of things posted on Facebook of people that live here and have lived here start running down, we don't have a real mall, or, start. Amy Mahaffey does a wonderful job of that.
Real malls are lame.
And if I see it, I send it to her, let her take care of it. She's good. But all of us see different realms that, you see people differently than I do, and looking for those things and correcting it. Adults too.
All right, Joanna, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do you have-
Well, I just had one more, and I mentioned that. It's a new in Appleby called the Yellow Rose. She's come in, and basically it's another large building, used to house a bunch of people from Rusk. Long story short, it's going to be another venue for parties, weddings, reunions, whatever you'd like. Kind of a rustic, just typical East Texas fun.
Is it Appleby?
Where is it?
It's on CR 214. But it's already a standing building that they're redoing, and 200 to 300 people. Volleyball courts, they're going to have their specialty too, but it'll be catered in. They're not going to have food there. But again, I like it because, again, we have things north, south, east, and west that are in the county that are really attractive for these roadsters.
their own motorcycle or cars.
Hub and spoke.
That's fun.
Thank you very much.
Before we move off of Joanne, I think this pertains to what we've been talking about. Like those hotel codes, can we go ahead and get those for
Yeah.
Blueberry Weekend?
Yeah.
We need to put those on our rack cards.
Yes.
I mean, our rack cards will go out in January.
And I've asked Scott too, that was part of my follow-up with him, is it something that we can provide in his collateral and his push?
Yeah.
I've got a group coming in.
Which Scott?
Scott Shannon.
Okay.
There's a lady that's doing a band group, that summertime was amazing out at SFA. And she's including those links.
Yeah, it could be in their university series.
Yes,
brochures and all
yes.
that.
So we're getting more and more people to add those links,
Okay.
absolutely. That's a yes, yeah.
We don't want to miss that.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Joanne. Mr. Bay, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you? Good. I just have a little deal here of this typical walk-ins and our meetings that we hosted here at the Visitor Center. We're very generous with our meeting rooms, and it's fun to have those folks in. Any questions on those?
Looks good.
Looks great.
Looks fantastic. Thanks, sir. Ms. Morgan?
Mike did a great job for us decorating, getting our trees up, and a wonderful job organizing the Linda Bond book signing.
That was real successful,
Yeah, he worked that for a long, long time. So no news, Mike Bay. We have got our branded coffee sleeves in, and we sort of re-upped our complimentary beverage bar to be seasonal, and that's been up for about a week, and it's been met with some praise and favor. So that's one of those things of elevating a service that was already there. We introduced a couple of new items in our sundry sales. One is a mason jar cup with a koozie on it, with buffalo plaid, tie into the university, and advertise them for sale on Facebook. And those have been selling. They'll pay for themselves, and we'll make some profit off of them as well. And then just recently, earlier this week, we got we have a knack for that stone pottery coffee mug that we're selling. And I promise there's going to be no more beverage holders, so I'll change my focus to something else. But those two, it's proven to be pretty. It's trial and error for us at this point. But with Stephanie posting the new items for sale on Facebook, and we're getting a great response for those, and just we got them all that in time for last minute holiday gift giving, and we're able to do smaller runs on items like that, so we're not having to hold a lot of inventory. And I'm interested to collect that data to see if that's more of a direction that we need to look at, instead of more inventory, having to hold on to stuff for longer if we keep up fresh content. But we'll be collecting that data.
We made a deposit of $120 out of the penny machine. And speaking of the new coffee bar that Joanna designed up there was two couples in late yesterday, one from Houston, one from Waco. They were together. And one of the ladies got a hot chocolate and put a candy cane in it. She said, "This is my new favorite place, my new favorite town." She had made her happy.
I heard that. I said, speak slowly and into the microphone.
Do we have a donation jar right beside it?
No, but honestly,
It's close.
it was negligible. I went to the Dollar Tree and got the hot cocoa and the spice cider mix, and the coffee we give for free. So it's just how you spend the money and how you display it. But people, it bothers me, but that's just the OCD, because people will come and get a cup with no sleeve and no lid, and I know that I ordered the exact number. And it's just not hospitable to trip them and say, "Take that sleeve out." Sleeve the lid.
Well, a while ago, we got a coffee, Mike said, "There was a sleeve there."
I've been pre-making some up, so they'll just have to.
Yeah, so it.
That's more a Sherry problem than anything else. I can work that out. That's fair. I just ran out of time. intentions of doing more with the matriarch decorations, and I just ran out of time and realized that I'm old, and the mind is willing, but the body was unable to complete that. And that wasn't something that I wanted to just slap together and do poorly. I'd rather take the time and do it the right way. So I think how I go to sleep at night now is just knowing that we've got a good foundational first year start, and then we'll move forward with that and do it the right way. But what we have is beautiful. Joanna came in at the last minute to annoy and pester and help me finish that. She was the Jiminy Cricket, an annoying one on her shoulder. But yes.
So be sure and check it out. It does look really pretty.
But yeah, other than that, we've wrapped up 2 really busy weeks from our last meeting. And I think we're set for a little holiday lull for us. And
Later volunteer, our group that came in, did I look forward to carpet?
oh yeah, Joanna made arrangements with Serve Pro after seeing the success of Pilgrim's Pride. Their day of service for the city, Serve Pro wanted to do similarly, so they came in one afternoon. They cleaned all of our carpets. They went into the storage rooms that Joanna and the Pilgrim's Pride crew, they cleaned out for us. So we're like, we don't even, it's not that we look clean, we are clean. It was that deep, your mother's behind you with a belt in her hand kind of scrubbing, but we didn't have to do it. But they cleaned carpet upstairs, and it was really well needed.
Now,
So
did you talk to them into doing that?
I don't ask those questions.
It's marketing magic.
That's right.
We maintain plausible deniability. Let Joanna, I just write the thank you note at the end. So it was very, very nice. But wanted to thank you all again for your service on the board. We've got you a small nominal gift of cookies and a Christmas card. We couldn't do what we do without you and your service and your connections with the community, and it never ceases to impress me, just your willingness to help in these meetings and beyond. So it does not go unnoticed, and staff and I are always indebted to you, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Y'all make it happen. It's a great staff. We couldn't ask for blessed to have staff like this. So certainly. Yeah. Share.
Smith travel report came in yesterday, and we're up. It's a tiny thing, I know. But for November, occupancy was up 12.5% over the same reporting time last year. And the same reporting time last year, we were already up 15.8% over 2016. So cumulatively, we're doing well. Still year to date, we're at 6.6% over the same time year to date last year, and then 6.1 for the running 12 months. And that RevPAR, revenue per available room, we're up there as well. So we were at 9 percentage points over the same last year.
And just again to reiterate, the RevPAR is really the telling number, because that's not just how many rooms you sold, it's taking into account how much you sold them for, and to be up in that number is fantastic. We're up greatly in November, which is already a very, very, very busy month, and then of course year over year we're up. And again, the Fredonia numbers are not reflected in here whatsoever. So that is the rest of the hospitality community that is represented there.
So Fredonia's in there.
Yeah, if you added that those numbers would.
Well, that's just crazy. I think y'all are doing a great job.
It means the staff here certainly is doing a great job, and us as a community, as it seems to be the theme throughout, it takes a village. I hate to use the phrase, but it really does, and everybody working together towards this goal, and every entity and every area of business which is represented here that helps make things like that look good. So we've had a fantastic year. Looking forward to another great year and building upon our success and growing this community and sharing it with others throughout the state, region, and Norway, apparently.
And beyond.
Do we get a lot of Norway?
Or no, know, there was some European influx we had in the last.
Yeah. Lately, we haven't had that many foreign visitors.
But,
French are coming in.
so the word's getting out.
Oh, yeah, we're a destination, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing a destination location. That's what we are, and that's what we will really be. So.
My understanding, we're real hot in Sweden.
That's right. That's right.
Now, for the next regular scheduled meeting, I'm going to be out of town at the Real Places Conference in Austin, but y'all can meet without me. I don't.
Okay, do we want to move it to a different date that would be the regular date? But we can move that.
Would it be the 23rd or the week before that?
The 16th
The 16th.
is when you're going to be out.
Yeah.
We can move it to the 23rd of January.
That way we could get a report from Sherry about that. It's a slow month anyway.
Okay. I'm fine with whatever you want to do.
Good, all right, so,
Move it to the 23rd.
yeah, designate the time for our meeting, be January 23rd, 8:30 a.m. right here. Same that time. Same that channel. And with that, we're